everybody, good morning. This is Jean here from Truelove Quilts for You. I'm going to be talking about our bookcase quilt that we're making. I was thinking this isn't really a tutorial like cut this, do that, because everybody's bookcase, if you've been following the last two videos when we've been constructing our actual bookcase, is your own. It's your own. It's your own size. It's your own wood surround. Somebody had just commented that they can't I'm in America, that in the UK they can't really source wood grained fabrics like I have on my quilt for like to emulate the actual wood shelving, or if they ship it, the postage is so high. So she said, I guess I'll have a painted bookcase, which is awesome. You're only limited, I keep saying, by your own imagination. Everybody's quilt might be a different size. Everybody's quilt will obviously have different bits on their shelves. I have a whole bunch of stuff, a million things on my shelves, and I'm going to be getting to that in a minute. I'm going to take my camera off my tripod, and I'll be showing you. We're at the point where I've cut out all my images, which I have been collecting. Now, eventually, I will take my quilt top with my things on my shelves carefully over to my table, probably in my dining room. I may do it here, I don't know. And I will start gluing down my bits. As of now, I've just sort of put them up sort of on my, I have sort of a fake design wall. I just clipped my quilt onto my shelves. If you have a design wall with a batting, like a piece of batting, cotton sticks to it, and you can mess about with your bits. I've just put a pin, as I will show you, in each one of my little images, just to hold it on. And I come back, and I've been working on this a little while, and I come back, and I don't like that placement, so I move that cup and saucer somewhere. And that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it. Try to step away from your quilt. See it from a distance. Ask somebody else to come in and get their perspective. If you saw, I put my doilies, and when I was filling my quilts, my one shelf, I didn't necessarily have any symmetry, and my husband said, well, why don't you have the plate on top of the doily, which I will show you that I moved. I'm like, of course, it would be highlighting. So just think about that a little bit if you have lace or doilies or hankies on your quilt top. Where you're going to put your things, like you would arrange a shelf. That's all. So I'm going to go. I have to go out and get some glue stick because my glue stick had dried up. I didn't realize I had a bunch of them, and they dry up apparently. So I'm going to do that. But I'm going to now get the placement, which I really am thinking about. I want to get the placement proper. There's my grandson. Come here. He so wants to be on YouTube. Are you swimming? Yeah. Oh, this is my Jackson. Come here, my man. Say hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is my Jackson. He goes out swimming with Maxwell. Okay, go on. Shut the door, honey. So, yeah, so I'm going to take my camera down and I'm going to show you what we do. So this is the fun part. Get your bits out, start arranging them on your shelves. And then I'll show you how I'm going to actually position them and glue them. Now, if you are not free motion quilting your images on, because that's how you would have to do it to have all of your images onto your quilt top. Well, actually, we're going to sandwich our quilt and then we're going to quilt it. Again, I will address that. Right now, we're just positioning. But if you're just positioning your bits and you're happy, and you want to glue them down and you're not going to stitch them down, then you might consider really getting a really nice glue, gluing them all down very solid, or a fusible web and cutting out all the bits. I can't be bothered with that. But that's if you're not going to be stitching them down. I'm going to be stitching them down in actually the quilting process. I'm not going to stitch my quilt up, anything. I'm just sort of designing my quilt top. I'll come to that. I'm going to do the actual stitching of my things down when I go to quilt it, when it's sandwiched. It's a little bit different than a traditional quilt. Art quilts are. This is more, some things, if you look them up, are collage quilts. I had my mermaid quilt. You just sort of place things, you glue them down, you just sort of, and then very carefully you take it all over to your machine when it's sandwiched. And the actual stitching down of your items is the actual quilting. But right now I'm going to take my camera off and I'm going to show you the bits on my shelves and where the rhyme or reason was, if there was any, you know me, up for my quilt. I'm really pleased about it. I hope you guys love it. All right, just a second. So before I show you the things that I put on my quilt, I just wanted to show you sort of the inspiration for my bookshelf quilts. I wanted to show you our little library here. This is next to my sewing room, my library, and this is in what was the other half of our two-car garage. This is a half of a garage, just a small room. As you can see, we are readers in our family. Except about 2 of our children, everyone loves to read. My husband and I have instilled the love of reading in our kids, and they all read. Obviously, my children all have families of their own now, and it's interesting, our grandchildren just came over to borrow some books of mine. We started out with the classics for our children. These were just some of them they borrowed and just bought back. There's a picture of my dear mother-in-law, Hazel. She died a few years ago. Best mother-in-law ever. She was in England, and wonderful, wonderful woman. And yeah, these are some of my shelves. If you can see, people have commented on my shelves in my sewing room. These are the same exact shelves. These are shelves that we got, I believe, at Home Depot or Lowe's. And actually, I've wallpapered these shelves in our library here. As you can see, I like stuff. I like a lot of stuff. I suppose I'm a hoarder. I'm a bit of a controlled hoarder. I like everything. I like lots of stuff, but I think everything's in its place. And, yeah. I don't have any dead cats lurking in the corner. Maybe I do. No. Oh, there's, my son is selling his car, so he took his license plate off the car. They're Trueloves. And, I have doilies on my shelf. I'll show you. Remember, we sewed doilies on? I don't have as many lace or doilies in this library as I do in my front room and my dining room. But I layer things. As can you tell? I layer stuff. I layer stuff. I layer stuff. There's a bunch of our children's graduation pictures up there. Just a few of them. I ran out of walls, so I started hanging pictures on my shelves. My plates. I have some plates on my quilt shelf. And I have little pictures you'll see in a minute. This is a doorway going into the other half of the garage, which is a guest room. There I have a Victorian picture and I have Captain Jack Sparrow. That's funny. When we eloped, my husband and I, 38 years ago. So we when we were married 20 years, we had the wedding that we never had. That was that picture before I got too long in the tooth. We have old pictures. It's my mom. My mom would be 98 years old. She died a few years ago. That's her and her sister. A long time ago. I don't get rid of things. Can you tell? I always say people who are minimalists come in my home and they start to twitch. They're like, oh my word. And the first thing people are like, oh my word, how do you dust everything? I'm like, I don't, you know, a little dust, who cares? No, I do. Every 6 months or so, I flick a little thing around. Oh, there's an Asian quilt I made. Quilts all over the place. Layers and layers and layers and layers of things. Oh, so funny. Oh, I have cups hanging on my shelves too. My quilt shelf. There's some old mugs that I had. Oh, I have done every craft in the book. These are some needle points that I've done. I love my needle points, that little girl there. Here's another needle point over here. I have tons of needle points. That's a picture of my family when Maxwell was actually just a baby. There's my 10 children. There's my husband. I put a thought bubble over his head. It says, send money as soon as possible. Kids ate us out of house and home, they did. I like shoes too. So somebody gave me that. I'm very easy to buy things for because I like stuff. This is my little, not a shrine, of course. I love Diana, Princess of Wales. Many books of hers. And that's my books over there. Again, there's pictures behind pictures, and that's what I've done with my quilt. I've just put a bunch of stuff. So, oh, my son just trash picked that Mickey Mouse gumball machine. Oh, some people throw away. Other people's trash is other people's trash, but sometimes it's my treasure. This is Maxwell and his brother-in-law built this computer. He's real pleased. So Maxwell comes in here. This is his little gaming station. It's right off our kitchen, so I can monitor what he's doing and what he's watching. There's our daughter and her husband. And more stuff down there. It's my son Francois. Before Photoshop really came in, that was down in Disney World. They put his head on that. It's sweet. I like signs. We have signs all over the place. Again, hanging things in front of things in front of things. So there's my inspiration for my bookshelf quilt. All of our bits. My husband is very kind and understanding. We had everything. We had all this when my children were growing up too. Things got broken, but give me a chance to toss it out and get some more stuff. So anyway, that's my little library. And these are my shelves, and now I'm going to show you what I've created in fabric and why and where the inspiration came from. Okay, thanks. So here is the beginning of my bookshelf quilt. I just have it sort of stuck up on my shelves with some clips because I don't have a design wall, but this works. As you knew, I had built my bookshelf itself with a wood grain. And this is my top shelf. Look at that. It's silly, silly, silly. What I've done is I'll go back. I'll do this quickly, and then I'll come back to show you everything what I've thought of. My second shelf, my third shelf, my fourth shelf, and my bottom shelf. What I've done is I've thought about an actual shelf. And the top shelf would be where little kids can't be getting to, right? So there I have my china. I have my china pots. I have my china teacups. I have my china plate. I also have some cupcakes. I don't want my kids grabbing my cupcakes. They're on the top shelf there. And then I also have my top shelf. You see that? I have my top shelf liquor. And then, oh, I need to go to the store with some money. So I just stuck some money under my liquor bottle to remind me to go get some more liquor. Funny. Now, I was telling you about this fabric that I got with the dollars. It's really good looking, isn't it? It's awesome. I'm going to leave that hanging. I cut this fabric out and I backed it with a iron-on, like a web, like an interfacing, just to make it stiff and it won't fray. So I have a, what is it, $100, a $10, and a $30. And I'm just going to stitch that. I'm going to stitch around. I'll get to that, but I'm just going to sort of stick that under that bottle. So that is my top shelf. As you can see, I put my lace in my shelving. This is all raw edge. I've shown you this before. I've just cut out my images, raw edge. And I will just be free motion quilting around each image with a straight stitch. I mean, with a, free motion quilting stitch around the designs. If very, 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 very up close, it could look a little bit sloppy, like all the stitching, all stitching down. But from far away, let me get this camera focused. Can't go too fast. From far away, you won't see the stitching because it's the black. Even on the white china cups, it'll be black. There is I have to still trim away the little frays from my blanket stitch. But there's how I blanket stitch that on. So that's my top shelf that I don't want the kids necessarily reaching up and getting. Now my second shelf is, I have my beer. I have my beer bottles. And again, I got to go to the beer store and get some more beer. I just love that. I think that's so cute. I just cut out some beer bottles from beer fabric. And then I have a potted plant and some seed packets. And as you can see, I highlighted on my doily this image of this potted plant. So it's fairly symmetrical. I have some china teacups, which, you see, I've just pinned everything on. I've just pinned it all on. And then I have some teacups that I'm going to hang. I'm just going to make a little stitch there, but they're going to hang loose. And again, I backed them with this fusible web, fusible interfacing. So they're just going to have a little stitch, and then they're going to hang loose, like they would do. Just add a little dimension. Here's the one plate that my husband said, oh, you have to center that on your doily. It's not quite centered. I'll center that. And then a little image of a little poodle. And then Kitty's little bear, I've stuck on the shelf there. So that's sort of my, sort of a precious shelf, but getting towards like, oh, I'm just going to stick a little plant in there. I got some beer, but still my china bits away from groping hands. Now my third shelf is what I'm sort of deeming my travel shelf, my sort of literary. I have a cutout of quite this fabric. You've probably seen it if you've been in fabric stores. It's a really lovely library book print. There's a camera, so that I've taken some pictures. These are all print. These are all fabrics, obviously. I thought I'm going to just stick a newspaper in there. That's a French newspaper. More beautiful images. And then there's a jar of peanuts, a jar of cashew nuts, and then a lovely little vase of flowers that I cut out. And this lace it's on sort of matches the lace on the shelf. So it's a little pop of color. So that's sort of my travel romantic looking shelf. And then my fourth shelf, which I've just been working on, is more of a, my fourth and my fifth shelf here are more of a pantry items. I just cut out the fruit and veg, and I may or may not. I have this tomato and these peppers, and I really like them, but maybe I'll stick them on, or maybe I'll just make some room on the shelves. I don't know. And then I have some fabric here that has. Oh, let me sit down here. Oh my. Sorry. No. I have some fabric that I had gotten just pinned on here, of course. Some chili, some salsa, some olive oil. some hot sauce, mole. And then another little cutout of beautiful macaroons, French macaroons. And these were sweet little fabric prints of little puppy dogs. And then some sheet music. And then I have my large bear, which is sort of tucked in the corner. So you can see it's sort of, the way I've angled it, it sort of looks as if it's, well, that has to be straightened out. But it looks as if it's sort of coming out because it's large, and I've sort of shoved it in the corner. That's my large teddy bear. That's my fourth shelf. I still might do a few little bits on there. I got to straighten this up. Of course, it's just all pinned. There's my little cat in the corner, hiding on the shelf. And again, pantry jars of fruit and veg. There's mushrooms, there's carrots, broccoli, lemons, some raspberries, and a potted plant. My husband had the thought, oh, and then a real pretty plate in the corner. My husband had the thought, like, to have the heavier, visually, the heavier items that you would. You would have the heavier jars and the food perhaps on your bottom shelves. So visually, you know, your you know, they would be heavier, that's all. And then your slightly heavier books. And then of course you're coming up to your more delicate china, your drink, and then your liquor and your very, very good china. So that, folks, is my beginnings. I still might mess around with it, add something or take away something. I'm not quite sure. But as you can see, I've just attached these with pins. So I can just, you know, sort of just my design board here. So I can mess about. Now when I'm satisfied with my placements, I will take this very carefully over to my dining room table, and I will take each piece off and reposition it perfectly. And I'll just put a little drop of glue around the edges just to secure it. As I was saying in the introduction, if this is just a wall, this is a wall hanging for me, but if it's just a wall hanging for you, and you're comfortable with just gluing down your bits, because they're not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be, you know, I could just glue things down, but I'm going to actually stitch them down. But I'm not going to stitch them down now. I'm going to just glue everything down. So the next bit I will show you is me gluing, and then me actually then I'm going to actually sandwich it with a backing. I haven't chosen my backing yet. And then I carefully take everything over to my sewing machine, and I will free motion quilt. And then in the process of free motion quilting my images down, I'm actually quilting my images. So I'll quilt every 2 inches or so. And then in the black, I might just do an echo stitch. You won't be able to see it in the black here, but I'll just echo it, just so it's, what do I always say, so it's consistent across the top of the quilt, whatever your quilting is. If you just choose to glue these down, then you can just quilt this one here and this one here and that one. So it's like every like the 9 inches there and 9. That's fine, because it's a wall hanging. It's not going anywhere. If you just wanted to quilt around the top there and glue everything down, just secure your shelves if that's how you want to do it. But I'm going to actually be quilting this like I did my other one that I sold, stitching all my things down. So there, I think it's so pretty, is my lovely. It's not a pantry quilt, it's not a china closet, it's not a bookcase, it's everything that you can imagine. So I can't wait to see you guys' images. We'll talk about that later, but I'm going to start getting these in perfect order, and then I'll start gluing them down, and I will show you how I do that. All right, folks, thanks. Bye.